some of the investors want to know, is it really important for their renters to have insurance and have a renter's insurance policy in place? And what does that do to protect the owner?
We always suggest that the renter have a policy and buy as high a liability on that policy as they possibly can, which is there again usually $500,000. It doesn't cost that much to go from $100,000 to a $500,000, very few dollars. And then there are contents. Of course, the owner of the property is not really worried about their contents, but that's what they usually put on there to get the liability. It's a very inexpensive policy, covers their contents, covers the liability.
Terry, tell me a little bit more about what the renter's insurance and specifically what the liability really covers, like in terms of property damage. So one of the scenarios was, so if a tenant stops up a toilet or creates a flood of some sort by running the sink, going away, or their washing machine, right, the hose breaks and it's their washing machine, is that going to cover, they've left, gone to the store, or they got to work and they come back and now they've got 3 inches of water right everywhere. You've got a mediation company out there, all of that. What will the tenant's insurance cover that or not? Or
the liability section, regardless of what it is or where it is, whether it's on the owner's property liability or the tenant's, liability is what they become legally obligated to pay by either contract or law or common law.
Okay.
So yes, it could step in because they're legally obligated to pay because of the damages for third party. Not for them, this is for the owner who is a third party in that liability issue.
Okay.
So it very well could make those correct, those payments as far as any remediation or cleanup or anything like that. But you go back to your lease also.
Okay. Like
and
what they're
should they do this, they should cover this. And so everything needs to correlate, whether it is the lease, and all the names need to be the same, exactly the same, because we don't want covering different entities with different names on leases, different names on policies. So there's where you get that legally obligated to pay.
Okay. So that makes a big difference.
So yes, it very well could pay for the owner's damages that they cause.
That the tenant causes.
That the tenant causes by an accident or by sudden and accidental, because there's policies that say, it says sudden and accidental tearing asunder of appliances.
Right.
Covered.
Okay.
It's just like your homeowners.
Okay.
But you have to specify in your leases what, they're going to buy and maintain so that they get these coverages. So it can cover some of the damage that's an accident. So it gives that owner another layer of liability protection.
Got it.
In the event there's a large claim.
Okay. That helps with that. So one of the other questions that we've had along the way is a tenant moves out. Sure, you've got a security deposit on them, but you walk in, you do an inspection afterwards, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's crayon all over the walls. They've ripped up the brand new carpeting that's just only a year old. But they didn't take a baseball bat and damage it. They didn't vandalize, they didn't steal appliances, but now you've got like $13,000 of repainting, reflooring, some light fixtures got damaged, the stove has like a broken thing. So they just lived really, really roughly on the property, and they only have like $1,000 on their security deposit. What does any of that renter's insurance policy cover that on their liability, or does the owner's policy going to kick in those type of damages where it wasn't, an act of vandalism,
right?
Or
it was a style of living.
It was just very rough. What do you say? A rough style of living.
Probably nothing.
Nothing.
Because you've relinquished the property to them to let them live in, and your policy is not going to cover because it was not really a third party. It wasn't a vandalism by a third party. It wasn't an accident. It was a style of living. And it becomes most of the time it's a no coverage anywhere. It'd be the same if you owned your own property and you moved out and left it for the bank.
Okay.
Nothing different. Bank's going to have to come in and fix it. Your homeowners is not going to fix it.
Okay.
That you just left. Same with the fire policy.
Okay.
There might be incidences where something inadvertently happened that caused something that might partially be covered, but generally nothing.
And then on that, sometimes that the owners have been recommended to do, like have that renter put the owner or their property management company on as additional insured or additional interest.
Right.
So talk a little bit about what that does and why that would be important.
There's different companies are going to handle it differently. Mainly
Interest or
the interest or the
or
additional
additional.
name. That's correct.
Okay.
And there again, it'll depend on the company that's doing the insurance.
Right.
Some of the companies now are even coming out with what they call an additional interest for cancellation purposes only.
Right.
The management company doesn't necessarily need to be named because you may have a hold harmless between you and your person you're managing the property for, but you want to know if somebody cancels.
Right.
And so you're just put on there as a cancellation notice person only.
Right.
But then you can be named as an additional interest. It can be, depending on the company again, of how they word their additional interest. Most won't name an additional named insured because you don't know, you've already got your liability, and you're wanting to be named again as primary on somebody else's policy.
You're just, the owners are really looking at, I don't want to have it ever go against my policy. If anything happens, I want it to go over there first. I'm like the last line, and hopefully everything will get done over here, and it never,
That's what we all hope, but it doesn't work that way. When you get sued, everybody whose name gets entered, has a name on any property, is going to, and they want to do a background, they're going to get named. I mean, there's just no way to get around it. They're going to name the owner of the property, they're going to name probably the management company, and definitely the owner that's living there, or the renter that's living there with that named in policy. But it does give you that extra protection.
And then also, a lot of the renters' policies too help to cover their rent if they were displaced, like if there was happened to be a fire or a flood and they had to move out while it was being repaired. Their policy, their renter's insurance policy, will cover the payment of the rent or the relocation during that period of time.
Right.
If they don't have that in place and there isn't anything, then the owner isn't going to
anything.
Right.
They'll get nothing. That it's called additional living expense.
Right.
Now, and what it does is it covers the additional expenses that are incurred by that person for living somewhere else till the property is habitable.
Right.
So it's not maybe not going to cover 100%, but it could cover 100%.
Okay.
Because they may not can get out of their lease.
Right.
Because they still owe their lease payment, so it would cover 100%.
Okay.
To go over to an apartment and live for a couple of months, 3 months. But if their lease is broken, it may not cover anything.
Right.
Because they can take their full amount of their money and go somewhere else. Correct.
You also have, on a lot of the investors' policies, there's a thing about loss of rents.
Correct.
And would that cover in an instance when they have damage to their property and nobody can live in it?
As long as it's a covered loss by the policy, then that kicks in. And right now we're having some issues with a couple of main issues that one are vacancy. A lot of the policies don't cover vandalism and some other coverages if the policy if the property is vacant 30 days prior to the claim.
Right.
There's a few that are going 60 days now.
Wow.
So you really have to watch your vacancies.
Okay.
And the other thing is we have to watch the properties where you're having people have illegal substances being used in the properties. And that is not covered by the insurance policies to clean it up.
Right.
So those are a couple of issues that are really coming to the forefront right now, and the owners are having to really deal with some things that they didn't have to deal with, say, 5-10 years ago.
Right.
So right now we're having those issues for owners calling in and they can't live in the house because it's claimed to be uninhabitable by the health department. But we can't do anything with it. And we're having some issues also with pets. They become legally liable, like a liability claim.
Okay.
Keeping a dog that they know is vicious and it attacks somebody. Legally liable for that dog and everything it does.
I wondered about that because there is that, there are, in fact, I just got a call the other day from 2 different people saying, one was like, oh, by the way, do you take pets? Yeah, we take pets. What kind of pets? And they say, well, we've got 2 kittens and 2 Rottweilers. Okay. And then another one called and it's like, yes, I have another one, it's like a pit bull and a boxer mix. It's like, okay. So those are typically considered to be of the vicious breed or dogs that can do. So what can owners do if do they just blanketly say, nope, no, we won't take any vicious breed, or is there any policy that can or without?
A lot of companies, again, are not insuring any of the vicious breeds. They are even asking us, are there any pets on the premises? They just class pets.
Completely, just pets.
They just say pets, and then they want to know what type.
Right.
And then they want to know if they've had any claims with the
Right.
pet. Most companies will dictate some of the vicious breeds that they will not insure at all.
Okay, at all.
At all. So
This is for the owner of an
this is
investment
for the
property.
owner of an investment property
Okay.
and for that renter's policy for that renter.
Okay,
So it's a both sided, it's a two-sided issue. There's just companies that won't even do it.
Right.
And you know, when you start narrowing down the companies that are writing the rental properties, then you say, oh, I'm going to add these pets that we're going to allow. You've just maybe narrowed it down to one company or two companies,
that will allow you to do
and
that.
so the rates go up.
Right.
So we try to get you the best possible coverage for the lowest possible cost that covers you.
Got it.
And there will be no two that'll be the same.
Okay, so one thing to do is really check with your insurance company to
Double
see.
check and read your policy. And I know that's something most people don't want to hear nor do they want to do, but it's like ask us questions, you know, ask
Okay.
your agent questions. That's what we're here to do, is answer your questions and to try to be as truthful as we can based on what we know today, because tomorrow there could be a court case
That changes
that
everything.
changes everything. So we try to explain it, and we ask people, write down your questions when you come in. I do when I go to do something, or when I go to buy something. If I want a car, I want this color, I want these options. Do the same with your product, with your homeowners, or with your renters policies, or with your fire policies for your owners. What do
Okay.
you want?
Right,
And we'll try to meet as much of that as we can.
right. So one of the things then to really protect yourself is make sure you know who these people are. And
Make
to
sure
do
you have good renters.
good renters and check in on them frequently.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.